Hi, welcome. Good evening, everybody, to our CEU Executive MBA Vienna, Berlin, Zurich Open Day. My name is Thomas Lamel. I'm the Senior Program Manager, and I will guide you through this evening. So, what to expect tonight? First, we'll start with a program presentation about the Executive MBA program. Then you'll have the opportunity to get to know one of our current participants, who is the perfect testimonial for you to talk about his experience and motivation to join Executive MBA. Then you'll have the opportunity for a general Q&A session with our faculty director, Maciej Kieślowski. And we also have the honor of having Professor Maciej Kieślowski as our keynote speaker tonight at 7 p.m. on the keynote presentation on entrepreneurship and disadvantaged groups, a silver bullet. So let's get into it. If you have any questions during the presentation about the program or about the topic of the keynote presentation, feel free to post your messages, your questions into the Zoom chat box, or if you're live in Berlin, Zurich, or Vienna, just raise your hand or just ask a question if you want to be heard. So let's start with the program presentation. The problem you're facing right now these days is the question, is an MBA still relevant? Or to put it more boldly, is it still worth it? Because on the one hand, business management seems to be as intensively knowledge-based as ever in history. And data-driven decision-making, advanced financial management, ever more complex leadership challenges in the era of massive social and generational changes, ever more complex strategic and political picture, and expectations for companies to take a more active role in solving the world's key social and environmental challenges. And on the other hand, there is just so much uncertainty and change going on in the world right now. Just think about the last decade. In 2008, we've seen the biggest financial crisis since the 1930s. In 2015, we had, at that time, the largest refugee crisis in Europe in decades, now obviously overshadowed by an even bigger one. In 2020, we have witnessed the largest pandemic in a century, and it's still ongoing. And today, we are witnessing the biggest war in Europe since World War II. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place right now. And some of them are positive, of course, but some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. And the key question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and uncertain environment? And the obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? We've seen an explosion of online education over the last 2 years, and I'll show you why we believe CEU Executive MBA is worth it. So if you're interested in further education, you usually start doing research for the best business schools out there, of course, because you're reaching for the stars and you deserve, and you're looking for the best education out there with the leading business schools in the world. Most of these leading business schools in the world happen to be located in the UK or mostly in the US, which brings a set of advantages and disadvantages. For example, let me just give you an overview of the advantages and disadvantages of the leading business schools in the world. Most of these leading business schools are very much mission-driven. They offer a differentiated MBA curriculum, which means they offer a certain perspective, they offer certain values or a certain mission that you would be aligned with. Also, these leading business schools, again, mostly located in the US, offer global faculty with top credentials. What does it mean? Global faculty means that your professors, your guest lecturers, your other lecturers are coming from around the world with top credentials, coming from the best universities out there. Again, the leading business schools mostly that you have done that you started your outreach with. What you would find in these universities is an international student body because of their reputation of these universities, because of their international setting. you would find students, participants from basically around the world, which adds to the diverse flavor of these programs. And diversity is, I guess, something that you're looking for in an executive MBA program. These American universities offer a certain campus experience, because we know from American college movies that university education in the US is more than just knowledge transfer in a building. It's about creating a sense of belonging. It's about having a campus, and it's about being part of a much broader community that you would be in. The disadvantages of these programs is, everything comes with the downside, is that these programs start at a tuition of at least 120,000 euro of tuition, plus other expenses like traveling, cost of living, etc. And that's a huge and striking disadvantage of these programs. Another disadvantage of these programs is that they require you to be out of your job for at least a year. Some programs require you to be absent from your job for at least 2 years, which is another financial burden. And speaking of disruption in your life, there's not solely disruption in your work life. These programs also imply disruption in your private life, because it means that you would need to relocate your family to the new MBA location. And since most of our partners are working as well, we do have children who are attending schools, this might be a logistical issue for you to relocate your family, but it's also a financial issue, because you would need to add cost of living at the new location for your whole family as well. So if this frightens you off, you usually start doing research for programs in your city, basically, for local programs. And they offer a set of advantages and disadvantages as well. The local programs in your city offer a plain vanilla MBA curriculum. They don't offer a certain perspective. They don't offer a certain expertise, and they are not mission driven. They don't have any values in most cases. Another disadvantage of this program is that you would find mostly local faculty. Since they are local programs, made at most regional programs, the faculty is not attracted on an international level. They're being recruited on a very local or transnational level, but it's not international. The same argument applies to the student body. In these local programs, like here in Berlin or in other places, you would find a very low international student body, because people would be coming from the region or the city only, or maybe neighboring countries, but it's not going to be an international program. Whereas the program at CEU, by the way, is very international, because we are the second most international university in the world. I will talk about this fact later. But a huge advantage of these local programs is that they're affordable. Most of these local programs start at 80,000 euro of tuition, which is a striking argument compared to 120,000 euro of tuition in the US. The programs are located in the city you live in, or a city that is close to you, you can actually stay on your job and do the executive MBA or do an MBA program in a part-time format that allows you to juggle work life, study life, and your family life. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of two worlds. Let's start with the most striking argument, which is tuition. Tuition at CEU Executive MBA is only 29,000 euro. Thanks to the financial endowment that we have, we are able to offer this competitive tuition at only 29,000 euro. I will talk about it later. But it's a striking argument for you if you have to look at your finances, of course. Another huge advantage of CEU in general and the CEU Executive MBA is that the Executive MBA at CEU is the Executive MBA for the open world. We offer a value-driven, a mission-driven executive MBA, and I will talk about the philosophy for the open world later. Also, there is no work interruption, thanks to the practical and flexible modular format. We'll talk about it in the next slides. As I already said, we have an international student body. Because of the modularity of the program, we are the second most international university in the world, and the modular format allows people from around the world to actually commute to the program. We have, in the current cohorts, we have people flying in from as far away as Vancouver, Canada, for example, or Vladivostok, Russia. We have Australians in the program, even students from South Africa, India, Malaysia, Mexico, and of course the Middle East, Central Asia, and of course Europe as our participants. Participants can fly in, can fly out, which is a major advantage of the program. And when we say world-class faculty that I already mentioned, we really mean it. I would like to give you just an overview of the faculty members that are going to teach your classes. I'm not presenting all of the faculty members, of course, but just a selection to give you an overview, an impression of who's going to teach your classes. And academic excellence is the common thread in this overview. So, for example, Professor Isosenius from with a PhD from Central Florida. She's an expert on marketing and emotional marketing in particular. She will teach your marketing classes. Or Professor Mark Kaufmann for economics. Mark is an expert in applied theory with a PhD degree from Harvard University. Another good example of academic excellence and diversity is Joy Chen. If you're new to finance, Joy is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our participants tell us how she's just unique in explaining complex financial concepts to beginners. But if you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Professor Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. So no matter, regardless if you have previous knowledge in finance or if you have no previous knowledge, you will be placed in the standard or the advanced track course in finance. Or Luca Kerestegi, an expert on data and a practitioner from McKinsey. She will teach your data course, and she's an expert on data science and industry digitalization. Miklos Koren, another good example of our diverse and excellent faculty. The course in big data will be taught by him. He's one of the leading scholars in this field in Europe with a PhD from Harvard University. Or Professor Sofia Barni, she's an expert on the future of work, which includes topics like automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. She's got a PhD degree from London School of Economics. Or for the leadership program, which is our common thread and the focus of our program, you'll be taught by Austin for leadership, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents. He will lead the way in leadership. This was just an overview of our faculty members, but we also have some visiting faculty. I would like to give you an overview of our visiting faculty, just to name a couple of them. Professor Christian Seelos, an innovation expert from Stanford University, where innovation is basically, it's the hotspot of innovation. Or Professor Miklos Savary, an expert on digital marketing from Columbia University. Professor Omar Hernandez, an expert on operations management. He has just taught in the March module at CEU Executive MBA in Vienna. Professor Hui Chen from the University of Zurich, which is, I think, very current because we are hosting the event tonight in Zurich as well. So some people may even know her from the University of Zurich. And Professor Paula Caproni from the University of Michigan. All of them experts in their specific fields and adding up to the academic excellence and diversity in our class. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 9-module program. The dates you can see on the screen right now are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and family activities already, based on these dates. As you can see, we have 2 modules in the first year, in August and in October, 4 modules in the second year, next year, and 3 modules in the last year, which you might have noticed that we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like November 1st or May 1st or August 15th for a reason, because it's easier for you to take time off your job and actually attend a module over a long weekend. Again, less work disruption for you because it's a program that fits your life and not ours. In the summers, which is the kind of center column, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place on our beautiful Budapest campus, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. 6 of these modules take place in Vienna, and 3 of these modules take place in Budapest, which gives you 2 perspectives, 1 perspective from the kind of more Eastern European perspective, and 1 perspective from the Western Hemisphere, let's put it that way, point of view in Vienna. Another strong asset of the program is the alumni network, because one day there will come the day when you finish with us and you will join CEU alumni from around the world. Again, as I already said, CEU is the 2nd most international university in the world, and you can rely on an active elite network of more than 18,000 professionals around the world on every continent. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world, wherever you go in the future in the world, you can easily reach out to these local chapters and make new friends with, or just network with those people. And we offer basically a two streams here for the approach. First of all, it's a very American-driven alumni approach. So all of our alumni are easily approachable in a structured way or in an informal way. If you prefer the structured way, you can contact our alumni relations department at CEU. If you're looking for a specific person at a specific company, at a specific organization, in a specific city, or in a specific country, you can just send an inquiry to our alumni relations, and they'd be happy to put you in touch with those people that you requested. Or in an informal way, you can just reach out to our social media groups on LinkedIn or Facebook and just put a message there that you're looking, hey guys, I'm on a business trip. I'm going to, let's say, Beijing next month. I'm looking for CEU alumni to, mingle, to interact with, to have a drink with, or for professional reasons. And our alumni are very happy to respond to you and basically have a drink or have a dinner with you in these locations. And this is a network that you can really count on, and one of the key assets that we have. And again, it's basically around the world, an active elite network of more than 18,000 professionals around the world. So one of the questions you might have is, how are we even able to offer such a high quality program at only 29,000 euro of tuition? And the answer is pretty simple and lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros, who's currently in Davos, made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion with a B, to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. And we're passing on this financial advantage to democratize higher education and to offer tuition at lower cost and more competitive cost. So what does the Executive MBA for the open world mean? What makes CEU unique compared to other programs? First of all, when we talk about open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies and privileges. both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. For us, diversity is key to creating a successful program, and it's part of our DNA. Diversity for us is not just an empty marketing catchphrase to create colorful brochures. It's part of our DNA and part of the success of this program. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives which create polarization in our societies these days. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. The way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join this program and are underrepresented on executive and leadership levels in our society. For example, just to give you an impression of our diversity fellowships, we have fellowships for business women, for managers with a disability, for ethnic minorities, for LGBTIQ managers, etc. Or in Germany, for example, a fellowship, a so-called social mobility fellowship. And in Switzerland, a fellowship for managers with a diversity background. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses and resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. Whatever your professional background is as a professional, if you're coming from the corporate world, if you're coming from entrepreneurship, if you're coming from engineering or NGOs, the public sector, or civil rights movements, you can be a positive change agent in the spirit of open society and foster democratic debate around the world. So what does the typical CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? In the current cohort, we have 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including 3 years of leadership experience. As you can see from the background image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate lively discussion and debate and interaction in class. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs. And we want to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the strategic, to the leadership level. Every participant can choose to join online if, for example, traveling is inconvenient, or if you have any travel restrictions in place. You can, or if it just doesn't fit in your life, you can join online if you want to. We have invested studio-grade microphones and videos capturing lecturers and all participants for online participants, because it could be sometimes difficult to follow a discussion with people joining online via Zoom in a hybrid setting with people in class. But we have invested heavily in order to facilitate the best learning experience for both people on site and online. We have invested also in video content and infrastructure. We have invested in large screens and high quality cameras to capture every debate entry, so it's easier for you to follow a lively debate in class. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams and created personalized virtual backgrounds, which you can see in this example picture on the left. Speaking of support teams, the support teams are a very smart innovation that we created for your group work. It's not just a random group of people that you will be working in your group in order to work on group projects. The support teams are handpicked, and you're going to be exposed to as much diversity as possible in these support teams. So, for example, you will not be placed in a group with people coming from the same industry, the same country, the same linguistic background, because we want to expose you proactively to diversity. Because when you're exposed to new decision-making processes, to new solution-making processes, to new group dynamics, this is where the actual learning kicks in and where you would benefit from the diversity. And again, diversity is not just an empty marketing catchphrase for us. We implement it in every single thing we do at CEU Executive MBA. Another interesting point with these virtual backgrounds is you can, of course, recognize the names of the people, but the color code tells you which team they belong to. So it's easier for you to follow these discussions and give feedback after the module. Giving feedback is another thing that we have came up with. Your evaluation will not be based on evaluation by your professors and lecturers only. There is 360-degree peer evaluation in your class, which means you will be evaluated also by your fellows, and vice versa. You will evaluate your fellows as well based on their debate entries and their group work, of course. And at every level that you're with us, you deserve and you will get high quality individual support. From the level of inquiring about the program, to actually applying for the program, to enrolling into the program, to being a current participant or being an alumni, you deserve and you will get high quality individual support. So tuition is €29,000 for the whole program and includes all the credits. As I already said, we are in the happy position, we're in the lucky position to offer a variety of scholarships and fellowships. There's just too many of them to mention them, all of them. I would like to invite you to book a one-on-one consultation with me if you want to have more information on scholarship, financial support, and fellowships. The link has been just shared in the chat right now. Feel free to book a consultation with me, and I'd be happy to advise you on scholarships, for example, for professionals in Germany or in Switzerland or in Austria or around the world. We offer scholarships internationally. In order to, again, as I already said, there's an online option. Participants can choose flexibly at every module if they want to participate online or on site, if traveling is inconvenient. However, I strongly encourage everybody to join on site, not only because it's the better learning experience when you're in class and interacting in class, but let's be honest about it, it's just way more fun to be in class. Think of all the lunch breaks, the dinner breaks, the coffee breaks, the social gatherings after class, going out together in the evenings. This is where the networking really starts and where you would have the opportunity to build up a network and making friendships for a lifetime. As far as accommodation is concerned, in order to defray your other costs, we have negotiated discount rates with partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest, ranging from the budget level to luxury level. And we have negotiated discount rates with partner airlines like Lufthansa Group and Austrian Airlines, which bring you to Vienna or Budapest at the lower rates. We have already started negotiations with other airlines, for example, Ethiopian Airlines, to bring more people from Africa or the Middle East at a lower cost to Vienna and Budapest. So people from the MENA region, the Middle East, Africa, are going to benefit from those discounts in the future, hopefully, too. So we invite you to join the open world. The application deadline is June 12th, and the application starts online on our website. I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible because we have a first come, first served policy. And the sooner you apply, the sooner you're able to reserve your study seat and actually be accepted to the program. You're invited to book a one-on-one consultation with me to discuss your individual questions and optimize your applications, or talk about financial support. Feel free to use the link that has been shared in the chat box in order to get in touch with me. So I think it's one thing to hear about the program from me, from the program office, I think you have the impression that we're super committed and passionate about the program. But I think the better testimonial for you as a potential applicant or an interested person is to talk to people who are actually in the program and give better feedback, and not biased feedback, of course, to you. And I'm happy to have Benny with me tonight, this evening, joining us from Alfred Landecker Foundation, where we are having this wonderful open day, and where we are welcoming people tonight here in this foundation tonight. And Benny is working for Alfred Landecker Foundation, but he will talk about his professional background in a second. Please, Benny, introduce yourself.
Sure. So first of all, welcome everybody, both on and offline, to my office and to our offices. And well, thanks for having us, I guess.
Sure.
It's definitely great to have you here in person. It's been quite some time, and I really do look forward to sharing some first-hand insights on the program, but also on my very personal experience with you. So,
if you could tell something about your professional background, like where are you coming from professionally, what are you doing right now, and yeah.
Sure. So I studied politics and law, and I spent all of my career in the public sector. I worked for 4 years in Brussels. For 2 years, I was actually I had a mandate, and I was running an NGO. For 2 years, I was a freelance consultant. And coming back to Germany, I worked always on the intersection of tech and politics. So I was running a think lab on digital transformation for social welfare. And now here at the Alfred Landecker Foundation, I focus on finding good ideas and scaling them up, both in Europe and the US, in order to strengthen democracy, so to say. So it's a bit like venture capital, but we do it for public.
I think that's a very zeitgeisty and current topic. I mean,
Absolutely.
just watch the news. I mean, democracies, at risk worldwide, and I think that's a very very good approach to fight for open societies, human rights, and diversity, especially at the crossroads with tech and not being in the ivory tower. You mentioned that you're coming from the public sector, which is an interesting fact, because I want to highlight that usually, or in the past, MBA programs have mostly been attractive for people coming from the corporate world only. But I think this is kind of a very unique opportunity for people who are joining us from non-traditional MBA industries, like the public sector, engineering, human rights, or NGOs, because of the reputation and the mission of CEU. So if you could briefly talk about your motivation, why did you apply for CEU Executive MBA?
So I was at a stage where I had leadership experience, but I understood that in order to get to the next level, I was lacking some sort of input when it comes to the technicalities of being a manager. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is that at least in the public sector, you're very heavily educated on the content side of things, mm-hmm. but how to actually manage is something that you're not being taught.
Right.
And I would even argue that in the public sector, it's often being somewhat demonized to take a business education.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So since what it is that I'm doing now is a lot more on the business side than it is on the. I mean, obviously, I do a lot of politics.
Yeah.
But essentially, the tools that I'm using are business tools. We do impact investment.
Right.
So in order for me to get to the next level, I wanted to take some formal education.
Yeah.
I knew what it means to be a leader, but I never learned to become one.
Yeah.
And this is something that I wanted to, to add to my formal education, which I can say at this point, almost finishing the degree, was definitely the right decision.
And I mean, talking about leadership, 3 of the 9 modules deal with leadership solely. So the focus, the common thread is leadership. Other modules deal with topics like finance or marketing, data-driven decision-making, entrepreneurship, innovation management, the bigger picture, sustainability, and of course, electives, a huge basket of electives that you can choose from. For example, sustainability in finance or new product design. But leadership is the common
phenomenal course, by the way. Let me say that, and I don't want to be biased, but that was definitely a favorite in our year.
I think you mentioned a good point is that people who are joining us tonight working for NGOs might be a little bit anxious of applying for an MBA program, because they might think that, you know, this is kind of a business focused degree, and I might need, you know, prior knowledge in accounting, and this might frighten you off.
You know, it's both. And what I've seen in my years is that on the one hand, for those coming from the public sector, they come with these fears, and then on the other hand, for those coming, you know, from purely business associated classes, they ask themselves, why should I sit with someone who's never learned this? And I can tell you one thing, that looking back, the transformative experience definitely came from the exchange with my fellow students.
Right.
And that is due to an extremely diverse student body. And I mean, obviously now, you know, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, I mean, you know, different languages that are being spoken. But one thing that really also makes a difference is the fact that you are put together in a room with people who think fundamentally different than you, and their aim is to not only challenge you, but also to find a common denominator in order to solve problems together. And this is a working atmosphere that that brings you forward, I have to say. So in my support team, you're speaking about these support teams, in my support team alone, we have people from the Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, then Germany, of course, and someone from Romania. And in addition to that, no one works in the same sector. Okay, we have people working in pharma, we have people working in politics, people working for tech companies. We have people who are freelancers and actually have their own NGOs as well. And then I'm in public. Okay, so imagine a group like that. Everyone has leadership experience, so everyone think that they know it best, right? But then they're being put together in order to solve a problem. And what at first seems to be very challenging, after all, you know, leads to your learning experience.
Exactly. And this is where the diversity really kicks in.
Yes.
When you're exposed to people who, you know, have different approaches like you and different perspectives, but you would need to find a common denominator in order to find a solution and make a decision.
Plus, you know, it's all in English also, so it's not necessarily everyone's mother tongue. I mean, no, not to be underestimated. So you have to find a common language, you know, both directly but also metaphorically speaking.
You mentioned one point. You said you want to move your leadership skills to the next level. Again, the target group of the ideal candidate has achieved everything on the functional level of expertise. You're an expert in whatever your professional background is. You're a corporate person, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're an NGO, or human rights, an engineer. No matter what, or big data, no matter what your professional background is, you want to move to the strategic, to the executive level, or you have recently moved on to the strategic and executive level, but you want to become a better leader. And we equip you with that skill set in order to become better leaders.
And obviously I want to highlight that, I mean, I started, my first job was in a leadership position, right? So I started in a leadership position. This is how I started my career. But at the same time, I understood that going back to uni would be a drastic shift from where I was standing in my career. So obviously this program was extremely, and I mean, I'm not only referring now to the way it's structured, being a modular, you know, being in modules, but also to the fact that the one thing that you really did deliver on is the promise that with regard to the amount of work you have to put into, you can do it next to you know, full-time working. I mean, I have to be honest, those were intense 2 years. But at the same time, when I studied, and when I worked, I worked. And that is an extremely luxurious position to be in, because whilst of course this being an intense experience, I had the chance to actually leave my job, you know, and zoom out for 7 to 8 days for the longer modules, and actually think, you know, to try to think outside of the box, try to look at the bigger picture, try to also question my own stances. And that is something that is not to be underestimated, because I was not willing to give up on the position that I already reached, right? And I did not want to drastically interrupt my career at this stage.
And we don't expect executives to interrupt their careers. Again, there is no work disruption. When you're in the module, we want you to focus on the module. When you're on the job, we want you to focus on the job. So there's no work disruption. You can juggle both doable, of course. Thank you, Benny, so much. I'm afraid we need to move on to the next part with our faculty director, with Professor Maciej Kieślowski, to the Q&A session. I've seen that people have actually people have actually asked me questions before this event, and I've collected some questions from the Q&A chat box on Zoom, because people are joining us from around the world. Maciej, the first question for our academic representative tonight is a very, very typical question from a student, which is there a thesis? Are there any exams? And what does the grading look like?
Yes, thank you so much. Good questions. There is no thesis. Good news. We don't want you to write your favorite book, or if you want to write it, but not for us. Write it for fun. We have a capstone project, which is about everything is about practice, about putting the ideas. It's exactly what Thomas mentioned. It's putting the ideas that we discuss, that you learn here, into practice, and especially in two aspects. We want to see your ability to analyze a problem, find a solution, not just think through your gut feeling. We want you to think through models, through tools that we teach you, and we also want you to drive change, to change things in the real world, and that's the leadership component. The exams, yes, a few courses have them. You take them not during the module, but after the module, at the time of your convenience, online. But most courses, as Benny mentioned, have projects, and projects you do in your support teams. And I can't add much to the excellent description of that Benny offered, a first-hand experience. Okay, back to you, Berlin.
Thank you so much, Maciej. The next question I would like to take, because it affects my very role, which is the question, what are the application requirements? What does the application process look like? So let's start with the application requirements. We are looking for people with at least 8 years of work experience, any work experience, and of which 3 years of leadership or / managerial experience. We do require an undergraduate diploma from university, so a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, PhD degree, or an equivalent are fine. We can make exceptions for people who have enjoyed, a vocational training, professional training, who do not have an undergraduate diploma. But of course, you would need to explain to us, you would need to make a case why your exception, why you would still would be eligible for the Executive MBA. We require you to upload some documents, a CV and a motivation letter, and that's basically it about the requirements. So once you have decided to apply for the Executive MBA, and once you have submitted your application documents will be revised in a timely manner, and you will have the chance to hand in missing documents or to make edits to your application. And assuming that your documents are okay and complete, you will be invited for an interview. You can select your interview slot at your convenience, and it's going to be an audio interview with one of our faculty members. And we are going to ask you questions about your leadership style, about your motivation, about your team work style. And we're not going to play, we're not going to play mind games with you. We're not going to ask, funny HR questions. It's about getting to know you in only a limited amount of time, in 45 minutes. Assuming that you are passing the interview phase, your application will be presented to an admissions committee, because we are handpicking our participants. And assuming that they approve your application, you will receive an admission decision in a timely manner. Only in a couple of weeks since your application, you will receive a hopefully positive admission decision that will start the enrollment process with you. Maciej, another question on the academic part that I received. I think we already responded to you, but maybe you can give some details on that question, what is the role of leadership in the Executive MBA?
Yes, so another good question. A nice thing about the program is that in the price of your Executive MBA, which is already a good price, you are also getting a fully fledged leadership development programs. They are very popular on the market, and they're being sold for extraordinary amounts of money. Sorry, my tongue got swooshed in this long word. We actually do this as part of the program. Both, and it's kind of like a real leadership program with some group sessions and classes, some individual and group coaching, and it goes through the entirety of the program. It's divided, it's run by my colleague whom you mentioned, Austin Nichols, a world-class specialist in leadership with thousands of citations of his work, but also with a group of coaches and practitioners. So as always, as CEU, you have a balance between the cutting-edge research and the practice, and it goes through 3 very interesting segments or parts. Interestingly enough, you don't start with like charisma or like magical things like that, but with a more basic concept of good decisions. You start with a good leader having to make good decisions. Then you go to this more traditional good culture, like how you create good cultures in organizations. And then, very interestingly and very kind of CEU, you go to the finale of the program, which is focused on good life, because good leaders need to combine, good, wholesome, personal and professional life in a package. You can't be leader from 9 to 5. So it does not work like that.
Thank you very much. Another question is there any financial support available? I would be happy to answer this question. Yes, definitely. We are in the very lucky position to grant scholarships and fellowships and financial support to participants, because we don't consider financial support as charity, but an investment in executive talent, and we're happy to provide it. It's just that the supply, the number of scholarships and fellowships are so manifold and so diverse that we don't have the time to mention them all tonight. So feel free to book a one-on-one consultation with me to get specific advice on scholarships and fellowships. But just to give you an overview of some of the scholarships and fellowships that we have need-based, international need-based scholarships, and we do have country-specific merit-based fellowships. For example, a social mobility fellowship for professionals in Germany. We have a fellowship for managers with a diverse background in Switzerland. We have a fellowship for entrepreneurs and SME managers in Austria. We have LGBTIQ fellowships. We have fellowships for female leaders, etc., etc., etc. Just book a one-on-one consultation with me and get your individual and the perfect advice on your application and on your financial support. In view of the time, I would like to move on to the next part of this evening, which is the keynote presentation by our faculty director, Maciej Kieślowski, who will present a keynote presentation on entrepreneurship and disadvantaged groups, a silver bullet. Thank you for sharing. I would like to give you some more background on Maciej Kieślowski and Professor Maciej Kieślowski. He's the faculty director of the Executive MBA and an associate professor of law and strategy. He's got a JSD degree from Yale, an MPA from Princeton, and an MBA from INSEAD. He publishes in 3 disciplines, management, law, and political economy. He advises, besides the faculty directorship, he advises governments, international organizations, progressive political movements around the world, and he's a frequent contributor to international media, including Los Angeles Times, Political, Haaretz, Project Syndicate, Foreign Policy, or the Wall Street Journal. Maciej, we're looking forward to your keynote presentation on entrepreneurship and disadvantaged groups, a silver bullet. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I was actually literally interviewing for the Wall Street Journal as I was entering this open day. So thank you for the very, very kind introduction. However, I'm not going to talk about Central and Eastern Europe authoritarian regimes that I spoke with the press, but I'm going to talk about a very interesting and disturbing, it's going to be a disturbing presentation. I want to warn everybody. A topic that is emerging through the data that we gather in the COVID pandemic, because COVID pandemic was this big shock that gave us a lot of data about the economic impact of any kind of major external shock. And kind of accidentally, we got the data which really forces us to rethink this very popular theme. And I would say, like, this is just like one quote from like mid 2000s about the intersection of entrepreneurship and what we can broadly say are disadvantaged, oppressed groups and communities. You probably have heard a version of this argument, which is implied in this quote. Policies to promote entrepreneurship and business ownership are among disadvantaged groups are widespread. And the narrative behind it is roughly as follows. Because corporate world is so racist, sexist, misogynist, we need to give disadvantaged groups other avenues to success, and let's use entrepreneurship, the power of entrepreneurship, as this alternative route to break the hierarchies, the racial, the gender, hierarchies that are in the corporate world, and create this alternative route. So this has been around for a long, long time, but more recently there's been some question marks, and there's been some different narratives about entrepreneurship in general. So in 2020, in his 2020 book, very influential French economist Thomas Piketty, mentioned this idea of, issued this critique of the discourse around meritocracy and entrepreneurship, saying that it often seems to serve primarily as a way for winners in today's economy to justify any level of inequality whatsoever, while blaming the losers for lacking talent, virtue, and diligence. So he's kind of already raising the issue that maybe entrepreneurship is not such a silver bullet, but it's kind of a narrative, claim. There is not much empirical evidence here. Yes, but it's certainly an influential viewpoint. Mariana Mazzucato has been talking about the so-called cult of smallness, the idea that there is so much talk about supporting small things or small firms just because they are small. Yeah, so like, is there a virtue in smallness? Yeah, but this is so. This dates back. In a general discussion about entrepreneurship, it actually dates back. I'm speaking from Vienna, so it's very fitting to mention this gentleman, Joseph Schumpeter, who is kind of the intellectual powerhouse, the economic powerhouse behind the whole notion of entrepreneurship. And Schumpeter is very well known for this idea of creative destruction. You probably heard the term, that the small businesses are great because they destroyed always. Think how the narrative about entrepreneurs kind of destroying hierarchies, racial, ethnic, gender hierarchies, is kind of a version of this. Yes, like it's a creative destruction of old corrupt ways. He is known for this, very early 20th century comment that it's not the owner of stagecoaches who builds new railroads, no railways, yes? And very few people actually know that later in his life, Schumpeter actually came up with almost completely changed view of this. And he proposed basically an opposite thesis, which is known as creative accumulation. And his later thought later in life was that actually when he looks at real innovation in real world, the trail leads to the door of big business. And the idea here is that it's a big business that can afford to come up with new ideas, that can afford the risk of investing in new ideas. So I just want to say that this tension between entrepreneurship as a silver bullet and then entrepreneurship as maybe less of an enthusiastic solution for every social ill has been around for a long time. But COVID really gave this a new meaning because we have all these volumes of data on how businesses of various size responded to this shock. What do you think is the response? Well, actually, it turns out that SMEs in general did not fare so well during the pandemic. They employ about 45% of workers, and that's a US data, but were responsible for 62% of losses during the pandemic. And actually, it was even more the case that the small firms was particularly hurt. And this is important for my further data that I will show, which will be kind of more disturbing in terms of our topic. Because only 33% of small firms stayed healthy, while half of mid-sized firms, even if you go a little up to mid-size, were healthy. If you look at the UK data from 2020, it's almost like a linear relation. Here on the horizontal axis, you have a size of an employer, of a venture. Yes, less than 100 employees, 100 to 500, 500 to 2,000, and very large companies above 2,000 employees. What do you have on the vertical axis? You have how much people in different age groups, yes, employees of different age groups can expect to have their incomes cut because of wage cuts, less work, or even unemployment. And this is like a startling relation. The smaller your employer is, and by the way, the younger you are, the more you can expect that pandemic is going to fit your bottom line. Why is this important? Well, because now we are getting to really the troubling data, which we all should like reflect on. So what do we know about minority-owned versus non-minority-owned small businesses in the US? They are smaller. The average number of employees in a small business is 32% smaller if the business is owned by a minority owner than if it's a non-minority owner, a white owner, in other words, yes? So if we already know that the smaller you are, the harder the pandemic is going to hit you, and we know that the minority-owned businesses are smaller by employee count, you can already predict what is going to happen. And unfortunately, guess what? That's exactly, if you are paying attention and you are, expecting those differences to go, across the kind of bottom line, you already see it. Yes, in terms of average receipts of small businesses by type of ownership, the same relation, even more startling relation with that with employees. Yes, minority-owned businesses are smaller in terms of number of employees and in terms of receipts. And again, why am I saying it? Because just on the previous slide we saw that the smaller businesses are hit harder. So if you have statistically significant relation between the size and the ownership in terms of those disadvantaged groups, you will clearly end up with a picture like this, and this is the very disturbing McKinsey 2020 study, which shows whether the business is healthy, stable, at risk, or distressed. Yes, based on both the interviews with owners and objective measures. What do we see? Well, unfortunately, we see the same racial hierarchies that we want to, or general racial, gender, structures of privilege, as we call it, that we wanted to escape from in big business, unfortunately raising their ugly head, especially in difficult times when it comes to entrepreneurship. Yes, like who is in most distress? Companies owned by the most disadvantaged, discriminated against group in the US, which is non-Hispanic blacks. Who is the least distressed? Of course, the white businesses, the white-owned businesses, yes? So the structures of privilege and underprivilege and oppression are replicated into entrepreneurship. And, SMEs owned by African Americans and immigrants experience largest losses. This is just another study from the US confirming the same what McKinsey showed, yes? From Canada, women-owned businesses fire disproportionately higher percentage of workers because they were in so much distress. From Brazil, if you want to go outside, North America, still self-employed blacks lost almost 1 more hour per week, which is a significant, on average, is a very significant impact than self-employed whites and self-employed mixed race. I mean, it's kind of lost half. So between blacks, mixed race, and white Brazilians, it's almost the same, with the same relation that we would expect, unfortunately, in a society when white privilege, male privilege is still dominant, yes? And that's like basically shows that almost all societies are like that. Even German data, you would think, Germany is like so much more welfare state. Still, women self-employed, 33% more likely to expect income loss than male self-employed. And that's Germany, that's Europe, welfare state, yes? Per employee amount of paycheck protection programs, which was supposed to help businesses in the US, paycheck protection program. Again, who got it? More white-owned businesses than minority-owned businesses. So even when government helps, the same structures of privilege persist. So what is the bottom line from this? Why is this that entrepreneurship may not be such a silver bullet, unfortunately? Yes? Well, if you think about why white or male or cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied privilege exists, a lot of this comes both, of course, from discriminatory laws and social structures, but in the area of business and business activity, those privileges demonstrate themselves through access to network, yes? Which is, you don't like magically become independent on anybody just because you become an entrepreneur, yes? You need to have customers, you need to have relations. So people with privilege will have more of this. Access to capital, especially in difficult times. If you don't have access, if you are personally wealthy or you come from wealthy family, it's easier to soldier through difficult times. Access to attractive sectors, another incredibly concerning finding, that if you think about the share of minority-owned small businesses, so which type of industries minorities are mostly focused on, and the share of vulnerable businesses in COVID, unfortunately, you have again the same relation, like accommodation and food services. So many great small businesses in America in this sector, or in retail, or in personal services, are owned by minorities. Guess what was hit most in COVID? Yes, exactly those sectors. Yes, personal services, restaurants, So it's very much what Piketty discusses, which is like, we will then say, oh, they were not just good enough. Yes, it's almost more insidious than in a big business, because you create this veneer that like everybody is like, their own boss. But structural factors are raising their ugly head all the time. Spare time. Yes, if you are a single mother, if you need to take care of elderly parents, yes, if you don't have, the minders and the childcare and money for that, your business will suffer if you are a small business owner. And of course, different consequences of failure. If you are rich and you fail, okay, you share the story of like how great your failure experience has been. Yes, you can, join some, incubator and share your stories about like what you learned from failure. If you are a single mother of color and you fail, you need to declare personal bankruptcy, and and there is nobody who's going to listen to your story. Yes. So what are the takeaways? Just like some honest takeaways about our societies, our businesses, and the role of entrepreneurship. It's not all bad, but entrepreneurship is clearly not a silver bullet for privilege, for inequality, for discrimination, for racism, for misogyny. I would go even further, that it's very easy and it's very tempting in the current zeitgeist to kind of crusade against big business and its all evils. But we should also understand that big business may actually, if it works well, and I will come back to this point, it may actually shield vulnerable people more than small enterprises, where they don't have this capital accumulation that Schumpeter was talking about, that can cushion against unforeseen events. So the large corporation can potentially better shield their employees. If we think about this being the last crisis, COVID, no, it's being the next crisis. Yes, after the financial crisis, 2015 refugee crisis, climate crisis, we are going into more and more crisis-driven world. And we need to start thinking in this completely uncertain world. We have wars, we have climate, we have pandemics. Maybe we will be in a situation when more and more people will need to work for large corporations because they are better to weather this crisis. In other words, the ability to weather the crisis may not be a temporary issue, may become a strategically significant issue given the crisis-ridden times that we live in. We need to, there is no escape from coming back to big business and say, eliminate racism, eliminate, sexual harassment, eliminate misogyny. So we can't, just like, small business ourselves out of this problem. Yes, the small business will not be our silver bullet out of the challenge of changing the culture of big business. We need, of course, also, there will be still huge place for entrepreneurship, and we need more equal entrepreneurship opportunities. We can't be falling into this pseudo-meritocracy trap when it comes to entrepreneurship and pretend that the starting conditions don't matter and the starting structure of powers don't matter, and government must play a role as a safety net, free maternal care, free pre-K, free health insurance is a pro-entrepreneurial policy, because without those, talented people who are not from privilege will not be able in the more and more uncertain times to even think about entrepreneurial options, even if they have a fabulous and path-breaking idea. Thank you so much, and I look forward to having a discussion on those findings.
Thank you very much, Maciej. I've noted a question from the online audience, which is some statistical data that almost 20% of SME in the US are minority run. How do you explain the, how to put it, why is it so attractive for minorities to run SMEs or to be self-employed then?
Excellent point. And I think there's a combination of factors. A lot of this is of course a lag effect from the times which were more stable. Yes. There is also a lot of cultural endorsement of this. This is what I started with. The idea that, especially in America, there is this strong cultural fact, or the question that I'm posing is it a fact or a myth that entrepreneurship is a way out of, you know, the racially and, you know, misogynistic racist society that, you know, that many minorities experience America to be. I'm sorry to be so blunt. If we have participants from the US, they may feel offended, but the reality is that a lot of minorities in the US perceive that society that way, and there's been a hope that entrepreneurship can be a way out. That hope, I argue today, could have been more closer to reality in good times, in stable times. As we go into more turbulent times, with war, with crisis, with climate change, we need to urgently rethink this, whether we are, by promoting entrepreneurship as this great equalizing, we are actually helping people, or we are replicating the myth that Thomas Piketty was talking about, the myth of meritocracy, where it does not exist. I hope it answers the question.
And what is the regular criticism that your thesis or your hypothesis attracts? How do your academic opponents respond?
You see, Thomas, this is a very new data. Yes, this is a huge data set that has just came in. And I think, you know, for a discourse about such a powerful topic like entrepreneurship, like every politician supports small business. Like, think about like which country you choose, and like you ask a politician, like, do you support small business or big business? Yes, like what is the bedrock of Austrian, German, French, American, Brazilian, you name it, Canadian economy? It's our small businesses. Yes, so there is this very powerful narrative lionizing small business. Yes, and kind of even on the free market side, kind of being a little distrustful of big business, very often for good reasons, because big business has a lot of flaws. I mean, that's why we even start this conversation, because big business is so much, you know, a white old boys club. Yes, when we look at composition of the boards in Germany, it's, you know, like we have those photos from, you know, World Economic Forum. It's almost like from some sort of, you know, 1950s caricature. Yes, I mean, basically all people who look like me or you. Yes, I mean, it's just like crazy. And so of course there is a drive to find a way to solve it. But my argument that I am making is, I think just like pretending we can solve it by like making all the disadvantaged groups to like set up their own businesses and be like new Bill Gateses is, as the world becomes more unstable and more ridden with crisis, because what the damage we've done to the environment, to the world peace, to the stability of international order, I honestly think this is more only white men, like basically. Yes, why aren't we having more women? Europe became so much more diverse, you know. Well, I mean, it's always been diverse gender-wise. Yes, it should be half-half, but it became more diverse in ethnic, racial terms. And why is it not reflected, or it is reflected in such a little way in big businesses? I think we can't escape this talking. It's kind of a whataboutism, Thomas. Yes, it's like, what about, okay, big business is old white men. What about small business? What about supporting entrepreneurship? Yes, I think that's the problem. We need to stop doing the whataboutism and start solving the problem with our big business, because for better or worse, big business is going to be where most people work, where most people have their career, and probably increasingly so.
Thank you so much, Maciej. You presented the perfect appetizer for our people here in Berlin, in Zurich, and in Vienna. If you want to engage more into these topics and topics like this, feel free to apply for CEU Executive MBA and join this wonderful program and engage with professors like Maciej and others in lively debate and challenge them academically and engage in debate. Thank you so much, Maciej, for your time and your keynote presentation.
Speaking of diversity, I just want to add that, like, one thing we are really proud of is that, you know, in our top leadership of CEU, the majority is actually women, including the president.
Good point. Thank you so much, Benny, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Maciej, for your keynote presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us online on Zoom from around the world. Thank you for the people in Zurich, in Berlin, and Vienna for joining us tonight. Get in touch with me and enjoy. Have a good night. Bye-bye.